Trump's transition in full steam, it's full steam ahead. Look at this, we are talking National Security Advisor. We have an idea who's Secretary of State and a potential head of DHS, as loyalty proves to be a key component for his picks. Plus, the US Senate is set, the last race has been called, and now the Republicans hold a 53. As you can see, they've got a majority, we just need 51, they've got 53, so they are running the show. This after being snubbed, and Invite Pennsylvania's Dave McCormick is set to be escorted into today's orientation by a city. President-elect Donald Trump appears to be tapping familiar faces for key White House positions. Mark Meredith is in West Palm Beach on the Trump transition. Hey Mark, Ainsley, Steve, Ryan and Lawrence, good morning friends. It is hard to believe, but today marks 1 week since Election Day, and the President-elect's team is moving fast to announce who's going to be working alongside him inside the White House. Overnight, Fox learning that Trump is likely to tap Florida Senator Marco Rubio as his next Secretary of State. Rubio was once a vocal Trump critic. He has served in the Senate since 2011. He's currently Vice Chair of the Intelligence Committee. He's also urged the US to do a heck of a lot more to show support for Israel. They're playing a long game here, and Hamas thinks they have the upper hand, but this is a group that wants to destroy Israel. Hamas exists to destroy the Jewish state of Israel. What are you supposed to do with an existential threat? You have to degrade it or eliminate it. You cannot allow it to continue to survive. Florida Congressman Mike Waltz, a Green Beret veteran, is set to serve as National Security Advisor. He's urged the US to remain tough on Iran, a country he sees as a major obstacle to peace in the Middle East. We have to stay on offense, and while I absolutely respect the President's right as Commander-in-Chief, we do have to respond. Iran is a regional bully. It will continue to push. It is emboldened by weakness, and it is deterred by strength. Now the names have been trickling out one by one. Overnight, there was a report that South Dakota Governor Kristi Noem will be under consideration for Homeland Security Secretary. We are awaiting some more details there, and former Congressman Lee Zeldin set to head up the EPA, the Environmental Protection Agency. But the most pivotal moment yet of the transition is likely to happen tomorrow as the President-elect heads to Washington yet again for a sit-down meeting with President Biden at the White House. Steve Anzi, Brian Lawrence, back to you. And Mark, it doesn't sound like Melania is going to make the trip. The former First Lady is not expected to meet with the current First Lady. There has been some talk about maybe what was happening behind the scenes there. We haven't seen much of the incoming First Lady since last Tuesday, but I would imagine there's still a lot of discussions about how they're going to set up their living arrangement for Part 2 at the White House. Do you like being in South Florida with no necktie on? I actually love it. It was just so funny, Steve. I feel like it was deja vu. I came down yesterday and I feel like I paused the last 4 years. I spent so much time in Wilmington that this feels like vacation. I feel very, very happy to be back in West Palm. Yeah, if you want to take the rest of the morning off, if it feels like a vacation, no. We need you in 1 hour. Come up with some new stuff. Alright, thanks Mark. Alright, 4 minutes now after the hour. I knew Michael Walsh. Let's talk about him first. We knew he was going to have an important job. There's no one's been more loyal to the President. I think you also should really look at the word loyal. When you talk about loyalty, he's not looking for people that are just going to yes him to death. He's looking for people that he respects to give him advice, be sounding boards and talk to him candidly. Just people that he gets along with. I think that's one thing that other channels maybe sincerely think that he's hiring people. They're just going to do whatever he says. That's not what he's looking to do. I think he knows too much about setting up teams. But as National Security Advisor, remember, he was a key aide to Dick Cheney. The Vice President came right off the battlefield to do it. He was also actually in the fight multiple times. And he has a real sense of world affairs. He spends all his time traveling the globe. That's why he had such going to hot spots. It's such a hard time if when this officially comes down, because he's in line to be governor. He was in line to replace Ron DeSantis, and he probably could get a team together quickly and would be the favorite. Brian, I'm so glad that you talk about what the loyalty thing is, because that seems to be like the dominating question. It's not just loyalty in the sense of to the commander-in-chief, but it's loyalty to the agenda as well. That means the president, which is how it's always supposed to be, sets the agenda. And the people that are in the bureaucracy go out there and execute that agenda. Another thing that you're going to get from Waltz, there has been a big separation between the people that in the generals, in the special operations community, now they have one of their guys that are there. They're going to tell them exactly what's happening on the ground, and he's going to be able to deliver that information to the president. He's been outspoken, an outspoken Trump supporter. He's also not tolerant of illegal immigration. He's been skeptical about the money we're spending in Ukraine and our support. And he has said that Iran is a bully. He knows how dangerous that can be. If we show weakness there, his wife is Dr. Nashwa, who's on our show. He's Julia. What? Let me finish. I was going there. You still want to marry to the wrong? No. What knows Dr. Nashwa? Sister Julia. He was awarded 4 Bronze Stars, including 2 for valor. He's a retired colonel in the National Guard, and as Mark mentioned, first Green Beret to be elected to Congress. And in Afghanistan, he was one of the ones that led the search for Bergdahl, the deserter, indeed. And so over the last 72 hours, we've seen a flurry of activity, and that is because Donald Trump essentially got burned the first administration where, he went to Washington and he tried to find people who were, first of all, loyal and then aligned with his policy, kind of what you were just talking about. So that was tough. And he put out a Truth Social the other day talking about how sometimes if you await congressional confirmation, it can take years. And that's absolutely true. That's why up on the big board, right there in the middle, you've got the borders are Tom Homan. Tom Homan does not have to be approved by the Senate. And let's see who else. Michael Waltz does not, because National Security Advisor does not. Now Marco Rubio, who is expected to be announced as Secretary of State. Look, he's been a senator for a long time. He will not have any problems getting through confirmation. Nor will most probably the reported Department of Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem, which that particular pick a lot of people didn't see coming. So with Marco Rubio, he is very strong. He got basically the portfolio for Venezuela and Cuba, and he kind of set the policy there. He has worked across party lines with foreign relations and intelligence communities. He is indefatigable when it comes to this stuff. He lives and breathes it on foreign policy, but he knows it's going to be the president's foreign policy. For example, he's like, it's time to wind down the war in Ukraine. But of course it is ideally. But he also knows that letting your Russia take Eastern Europe, not a good thing either, and knows the dangers of Vladimir Putin. So he brings up experience with the Republican administration, Democrats administration. He's been a minority, he's in the majority, and now he's going to be in the White House. I love his story. His grandfather had to leave Cuba, and that's why he says he got into public office, because his grandfather saw his homeland of Cuba being destroyed by communism. So his parents come over here to Miami. They're hard-working immigrants. His dad was a banquet bartender, and his mom was a hotel maid. We remember that when he was running for president. And he was the one who confronted Trump in 2019 and said, we need to adopt these harsh sanctions against Venezuela to try to unseat Maduro. He's part of the Gang of 8 right now too. So, his defense creds, right now, he's getting all the intelligence briefing. But I also think this goes to the former president. The president-elect now thinking of Marco Rubio can take a punch. And this is someone that was on the other side of him back in 2016. But he was also the runner-up for the vice presidency as well. Obviously, the president ended up going with J.D. Vance, but he's someone that is close to the president. And he endorsed the former president, even though Governor DeSantis was in the race during the primary. So that goes back to the as well. And to Mark Meredith's point, they were rivals once they ran against each other. We remember they were both on this channel trying to get the job back in 2016. But then, didn't he endorse Trump right when he? Well, yeah, because eventually he realized, okay, 45's got the power and I'm on the same page. And that is where we are now, to the point of loyalty. That really is what they're looking for. He trusts all the faces we have shown you so far. Donald Trump trusts him not to go rogue, not going to write books. They're not going to try to just grab a headline for themselves. They are out for us to the Senate, where freshman orientation is set up for today. No hazing, right? But Chuck Schumer is refusing to let Pennsylvania Senate elect Dave McCormick, even though the AP is called his race attend. The state has not said it's official, but the writing's on the wall. This all comes as we get our final race called in the upper chamber. Madeline Rivera has it all from Washington. And so the House leadership stuff is about to start. And we've got this new person. It looks like Dave McCormick and Schumer just hasn't said, "Come on down, Dave. You're next." Yeah, so much to watch in this Congress, you guys. So the Associated Press called the race for Democrat Ruben Gallego in Arizona early this morning. So now we'll see if he and Republican Dave McCormick, who won in Pennsylvania, will be invited to freshman orientation later today. Neither of them had received invitations. A spokesman for Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer says McCormick was not invited because there were still ballots that needed to be counted in the Keystone State. That is despite the fact that the Associated Press called the race for McCormick on Thursday. The AP said there were not enough votes in places supporting Democratic incumbent Senator Bob Casey for him to overtake his GOP challenger. Some Republicans are now indicating they'll personally escort McCormick to the Capitol for orientation, defying Schumer. Chuck Schumer is just being a big baby, and he needs to just take the L and move on. The AP has called this race. It's not particularly close. Dave McCormick deserves to be in that orientation. I'm going to be there tomorrow to help walk him in because he needs to be in there. Although McCormick has not been invited to orientation, the Senate Republican Conference is still allowing him to vote in the secret ballot election for GOP leader tomorrow. The contenders to replace Mitch McConnell include Senators John Thune, John Cornyn, and Rick Scott. President-elect Trump has not endorsed a candidate, but Elon Musk and other Trump allies support Scott. Scott challenged McConnell in 2022 and got 10 votes. The winner tomorrow needs 27 of 53 GOP votes. Lauren, Steve Ainsley, and Brian. All right. Thank you, Maddie. Amazing the different approaches. Thanks so much, Maddie. Amazing the different approaches to the majority leader. Rick Scott was on every show. He's going to be on my radio show today. He was on with us yesterday. And Schumer and Thune are we're keeping this corny, excuse me. Yeah, I don't think Schumer's going to be a majority leader. I don't think he's going to be on your radio show. It's just a matter of asking, I'm sure. Cornyn and Thune are keeping a lower profile, and it's a secret ballot. You wonder if any of this is working either way. I question their strategy. And obviously, Cornyn is my senator from the great state of Texas. But with this new Republican Party, everything is about the constituency. And they're calling the offices to put pressure on their senators on who to vote for. And so I just find it interesting that they are making zero appeal to the public as it relates to their support. What I'm hearing from sources in Washington is many are infuriated about the secret ballot, saying that's the good old boy system, that's the smoke-filled room system, where every senator needs to be on the record. We, as their constituents, need to know who they're voting for and why. And it looks like Thune and Cornyn, they're very close to Mitch McConnell. And the way it works, the magic number, as Maddie was saying, is 27. So if the leading candidate gets, let's say, 20, the next guy gets 19, then the third guy has to drop out, then go back to Thune. I think the most valuable thing they could do is be the ones who can persuade Collins and Murkowski, right? That's what it's going to be. Ultimately it comes down to, and Maddie kind of touched on this a little bit, will Donald Trump endorse? I don't think he is. I don't think so either. Because remember, in the House race he endorsed when Mike Johnson eventually emerged. He, Donald Trump, endorsed Jim Jordan and lost. He doesn't want that again. According to the New York Times, there's a big story that talks about how a number of Trump's allies are telling him to try to block John Thune. And that's why they've got all these MAGA influencers who are calling people on the phone. Apparently, the MAGA influencers and MAGA general doesn't like John Thune because he's an establishment Republican. The thing about senators, period, is they don't like to be bullied and they don't like to be told what to do. And that is why, ultimately, it could ultimately go to either Thune or Cornyn. J.D. Vance gets to vote. If you're retiring, you don't. To Steve's point about this is the way that it's always been done. I think that's sort of kind of the problem now because you have this new wave of Republicans, especially when it comes to the audience now, who's voting for these leaders. They may not like being bullied, as they may quote it, but their people want them on record to tell them who they're going to vote for, or they're going to get primaried, or they were going to get replaced. You got to remember, Donald Trump won places where other Republicans that ran for the Senate did not win. So there's a mandate for the person that he would like. They're going to have to, then the Republican Party will have to change their rules, and it won't be for this time. It'll have to be for the vote is tomorrow, 9:30 in the morning. And I cannot believe Chuck Schumer is preventing McCormick from being able to go to orientation, which is this morning. Such a story. He's called it, all these liberal outlets have called it for McCormick. McCormick has 33,000. I think it's 33,000 more votes than Casey. So he is one. Can I say what I think it means in the big picture? This is an opportunity for Schumer to say, I'll work with you. And this worries me about the confirmation process because, the thing which you could only pick you Monday through Tuesday through Thursday. And then you say, okay, we'll do hearings for an hour today. And then we'll do other business. Even so, the minority gets a say in that. And then all of a sudden they don't have a vote after they have the hearing. And these things are dragged out. I remember Mike Pompeo wanted to get confirmed before the inauguration, and they just held them up on technicality. But it hurts the country. I think both sides do this. Nobody's worse than Schumer. This would be an opportunity to say, here's an olive branch.